if it doesn't look like mom and pop, if it looks like are put together, you have a really strong brand presence in terms of logos, colors, like if it feels really elevated, like an experience, people are more inclined to want to dabble in with the brand.
Welcome to the Raquel Show. This show is for entrepreneurs who want to play bigger in business and in life. And today I have someone who's special to me that I met at a mastermind before the pandemic and got to know over the years. She is one of my most stylish friends, like I tell everybody, and knows about so much when it comes to branding, digital strategy, and taking a product to market. She's also received a prestigious award that many people do not get, which is Forbes 30 Under 30. And she is the founder of two companies, AAM Consulting and White, a fine jewelry brand. Welcome to the show, Aisha Marshall.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm like literally so excited to be here. First and foremost, because of like what feels like decades that we've been through since our first time like meeting up. I'm like, wow, look at there's like sunlight and a rainbow at the end of like all of the chaos that was like COVID.
Oh my gosh, I'll never forget you walking in while a friend of mine were having breakfast and we got the notice that the world's almost about to shut down.
Literally.
And we were in
like,
LA.
We were in LA. You were flying back to Phoenix too, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we were both flying back to Phoenix. I mean, it was like the start of it. And the only things that were getting shut down were like global corporations like Google and Facebook. Like they were like canceling their conferences. And I was like, okay, if they're canceling their conferences, like everyone else is going to start following suit. And I remember after that like week, I had a flight back home from LA, ghost town. It was like the most eerie feeling of all time. And there were no masks or anything at the time. I saw a friend also flying back. She's like, do you want some hand sanitizer? I was like, sure, I guess. It's
yeah,
like,
no clue, no idea.
None.
And it's like all these places were shutting down and the NBA shut down.
The NBA. Yes, I think that's what happened that weekend. The NBA shut down.
And we were like, okay, this might be something serious if they're going to cancel all the games, all that money, right? And like spring training was getting canceled. So I'd love to know, like, as we talk about, the pandemic and what you were doing, and like you are now a founder of two companies, what kind of led you? It's perfect segue. Like, what kind of led you to where you're at today?
Yeah. So honestly, like COVID was like a good year, I guess, for me, technically. Business just like picked up. Everyone realized like, okay, well, I need to get in the online space now. Like that's the only place anything's happening. And like at the time, my agency was branding, marketing, and public relations. So like they were just like, we want to do all of the things that you do. And so that was really great. It was also great for like social change and impact. And like being a minority Black and Mexican woman, I had the opportunity to be able to like speak to a lot of the injustices that were going on, which was nice to just like be able to give back to the community. Very draining, but I was happy to do it. And then Forbes 30 Under 30 came out, which like to me, like being Forbes 30 Under 30 during that time when like everything is so high end, like that I feel like was an honor just in and of itself. And then transition and change, like, you just like begin to evolve. I think so many people evolved during that time in so many different ways that I too was evolving and just realized like the way I was doing business just was no longer aligned. It was pulling way too much out of me and I like wasn't getting that return. And I feel like I say that and I want to make sure there's like a little asterisk or caveat there. Like, yes, I do think that it is an equal energy exchange. You get what you put in, right? But there are other times where you're putting in so much and you're not getting out of it year after year after year. And as an entrepreneur, I'm like, there shouldn't be that much resistance in being the best entrepreneur that you can be. And so I said, you know what? I think I felt it, like you feel it in your gut. Like, I just need to stop doing what I'm doing in this way and do it completely different way. I'm like, how do I foresee this ending? Like, I don't foresee this ending well. I don't foresee, like, I was working 18-hour days. I was like literally every day of the week. I would be so extremely jealous of people doing things on the weekends. Like, I just was like always in fight or flight mode. Like, it was just chaos. So decided that I'm just going to shut it down with like no plan, like literally no plan. I was like, I actually don't know what's next, but I just know that it's not this. So like nothing can be worse than how I feel right now. And that's where like kind of beauty in the chaos came from. I started a consulting company, which is like less fight or flight, not necessarily the doer. I'm just like, hey, this is what you should do. And these are the metrics that we can look at to make sure you're doing well. And then as like a passion, I wouldn't even call it passion project because it's definitely like a full-fledged running business now. But like at the time as a passion project, I was designing jewelry. And yeah, that's how I ended up here in the last, like, what is that? 2 years, 3 years, 2.5 years.
It feels like so long ago.
It does.
Like so much has happened. And there's a lot of questions that I actually want to ask around shutting down a company or just what you just said, because I think oftentimes, you know, a lot of the people that listen to our show are entrepreneurs that might be in that hustle and grind, or that might be thinking, but they're just so attached to an identity that how did you get to the point of like, hey, you know what? I'm sure you went through, was there a process or were you just like, okay, I'm out next day? Or, you know, because I know that there's a lot of people that might be, whether it's quitting their job, right, and starting something new, but like out of that, like you sprung 2 new companies.
Yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't like that. Like you said, you didn't have a plan. So like, what were some of the thoughts that went through your head when it came to shutting that down?
So a few different ones, but I feel like lessons come at you in like a pebble, like someone's like throwing a little pebble at you. You're like, oh, I kind of felt that. No big deal. And then it's like a rock and you're like, ooh, that one hurt a little bit, but like no sweat off my back. And then it's like a boulder, like the biggest one or a ton, right? Like, I feel like that's just how lessons happen in life. And I felt like I was getting a bunch of rocks, a bunch of pebbles. And one day I literally just prayed and was like, you know what, God, like if this isn't for me, take it all away. And also do it quickly, and don't pray that if you don't want massive change. So that was like my process. I just felt like, hey, I'm feeling like this just isn't feeling right. And I was doing a lot of like inner work, and I went to a sound bath and just got super clear. And I was just like, there was just so much that was coming up for me that was like, hey, this is not the thing. And so what I would say is if you're feeling like you're going to have to shut anything down or transition, a lot of things are going to hold you back. Identity, where your worth is tied to, like friends, family, coworkers, especially if you own the business and you're paying for people's salary. Like that was probably one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around. But going inward, like you will always find the answer. And it just took me a second to just kind of sit with it and be like, you know what, this is what I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm doing. And that's it. And you'll be surprised. Like there was a time where after when I said, you know what, I'm done, I felt bad at how good I felt.
So good.
I felt so bad that I felt so good being done.
Yeah.
And like we're letting go clients that have like multi-million-dollar companies. Like we're letting go staff that like have to now file for unemployment. All because I'm like, this is just not in alignment and I'm not serving people the way I should be. And like, it's no longer an equal energy exchange. And I need to do this now before it's later down the line. And it's so much bigger. And there's just so much more collateral damage.
Was that during the pandemic or was that just recently?
That was 2021, I think. Yeah, 2021, last year. Yeah.
Wow. And this is why I wanted to ask that, because oftentimes we'll let go of one person, maybe because of performance or because they were out of culture. But think about it as you guys are listening to this episode, shutting a whole company down,
like literally firing everyone, even clients.
I decided to go a different direction.
Yeah.
Right?
We're no longer
it
doing
takes
this.
guts.
It does. And you want to like make people whole, you know, like we gave a portion of their retainers back. We gave severance to our staff. Like I was just like, I just feel so bad. Like, you know, I just don't want to do this, but we're leaving so many people high and dry. And Yeah, like sometimes the hardest decision is the best one for the future for all parties involved. And I feel like that is also like if you're spiritual or even if you're not, like praying or meditating or just using this as a guiding compass, like to do what's best for all parties involved is the best way you can navigate something so hard.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
There
If you're
is.
feeling this way, and if you have felt to let go of somebody is already hard, know that there are other people that have shut down their companies and pivoted into something extremely beautiful, probably better for your energy today. And you probably really enjoy, like you said, what you're doing today. So how do you balance the two companies?
It is a hard balance, honestly. Like taking your mind from one place to another is hard. And so what I've created. So before I started to, I was just doing one consulting because that was just, it's easy. It's bread and butter. Like I'm great at it. Beautiful for direct to consumer companies. Like it's just easy. And so I was like, okay, well, like a perfect world, like I wouldn't work on Fridays and like I wouldn't schedule meetings on Mondays. And I would just like let those days be the days that I like creative or transition, or if I want to clean up anything, like systems wise or admin, like those are my days. And so I created a schedule around that, which meant I had 2 free days that I wasn't like doing work stuff and, or consulting stuff rather. And so then I would fill those days with being creative. And that's where like the jewelry started to come about. And now that they're like two businesses running, I'm like really trying to just only like work certain days out of the week are like only protected for those business days so that I can just kind of sit in those mindsets, be a consultant or be like a product-based business and just like figuring all of the things out. So I felt a lot of anxiety around doing both in the same day. Like it was just way too hard. Like I just mentally could not do it. So yeah, that's how I manage it. I usually do a lot of like jewelry stuff on the weekends and just kind of get out ahead of the week so that manufacturers or like consultants or like anyone that I've hired to like support me can tackle that during the week. And it's like just a cycle. So yeah.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, you can do two companies, right? In a very short period of time, as long as you kind of plan it out or like and figure out what feels good for you.
Yeah. Just set yourself up for success, like and start to realize like, okay, this day didn't feel good. Why? And when I figure out why, then I'm like, I'm going to set a boundary in my calendar so that doesn't actually happen again. Like if I do more than 3-hour meetings in a day, I'm so drained. Like I'm beyond, and don't let those meetings be in person. Then I'm especially drained if I have 3, because it's just like, you're on so much energy and like, like it's just
drive time.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so now I'm like, hey, I'm not going to do that. Or the moment it gets after 3, I'm like, I don't want anything like super, super important after 3 o'clock because I'm just like a little bit more tired. I'm just not my best self. I can do admin stuff and like sit at a desk or sit on my couch and get it all done and be efficient. But like, if I have to be on, like it needs to be before 3. So like setting those certain boundaries around work, giving yourself the time and flexibility, like just not packing your day makes you more efficient.
Yeah. When it comes to products, and it's something that you specialize in and getting products to market and consumers, right? To fall in love with this product. And now you've got this jewelry line. Like, what would you say are some of the strategies that really makes like a product launch like super successful?
Definitely the perception. Like that's so huge for a lot of businesses and a lot of brands that I just like, the least small business you can make it look, people will start to treat you like a big business. So if it doesn't look like mom and pop, if it looks like you are put together, you have a really strong brand presence in terms of logos, colors, like branding, packaging, if it feels really elevated, like an experience, people are more inclined to want to dabble in with the brand. That I think is huge, is like the vibe of it all. Even if it's not luxury, I consult on this product-based business called Le Bon. It is a makeup brand and it's all affordable, but the packaging and the messaging and the imagery, I'm biased because like, obviously it's my client, but it's just so good. And it doesn't feel like it's this one girl running it by herself with like people helping her. It doesn't feel like that at all. And I think when people feel like it's not just starting out. They feel like, okay, well, if I purchase, I can trust this account. I can trust to get the product back. Like you've been like scrolling online, getting an ad for a dress or a bag or whatever. And you click on the website and you're like, okay, it's taking me to Facebook. It's not an Instagram account. I don't know. Like there's no, it's
Is
just
it
model.
really, like,
Yeah. Is it
legit?
real or fake?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
We're all so scarred by that. And so if you can make it look elevated, if you can make it look legit, if you can show like actual people using your product, if you have video, like iPhone style video, that's all like so amazing for launching a product. The other thing that I would say is if your product is more high end, you need an entry point to the brand. So think about like Louis Vuitton or Gucci. You can buy like a wallet or a belt, or like, you know, like you can buy like the smaller price point items as an entry point to the brand, but is everyone going to buy like the most expensive bag? No, but people want to be involved and enthralled in those brands because they're desirable. So like if you're launching a product-based business and your price point's a little bit more pricey, make an entry point to the brand so that people can purchase from you.
Mm. What would you say being in the product space and having like COVID? I mean, we see it even in the real estate and the building world. Like there's so many delays to so many different things. Like what has been the biggest like struggles with your clients since you are in this space of like developing not only strategy and brand for their products, but then there's the other side of fulfillment.
Yes, it is so difficult. So it really
like time the two, right?
It's so hard. So we have like a lot of my clients will have a shipping and fulfillment company, and then they'll have like their manufacturers, and the manufacturers are usually always overseas. And sending something by air versus by sea, the time difference is like insane. Like one is like you get it in 2 weeks, the other one is like 6 months. Like just like insane amount of time, months. And so, but the price point is also like drastically insane, especially if you're ordering large quantities of things. And so that's what I've been seeing is like trying to get the two people that like talk like the shipping and fulfillment. I'm like, hey, we still haven't received. Hey, we still haven't received. Hey, we're like, wait, no, it's somewhere on a boat. Like, give us a second. So I've seen that a ton. And what we've like done to combat that is just say like, hey, let's go really hard on influencer marketing, which really the point of that is obviously reach, but just to have more user generated content using the product that we actually do have. And like, let's sell that out. And then when the other stuff comes, it comes in like the timeline, who cares? There's no consumer that's like, that's really weird because they like dropped a new product every week. And this is the last 3 weeks, no product. Like no one is thinking that except for like us in our mind, like that. No one cares. Literally no one cares. So going really hard on the stuff that you currently have now, getting user generated video content, no filters, like just seemingly like your regular person, like that is huge for people that are like in the overseas delay game.
Yeah. You know, you bring up a good point. So now with that, and those that are in the product-based business that can't get their item out, like now do you have to create something on the customer journey side?
Yeah. So there's a few things that you can
said
do.
Experience with like Gucci and Louis Vuitton, right? Like they're really good. Like when I look at brands and I look at like how the journey is, I think sometimes that's more important of how they feel when they don't get their stuff. Like you get like those cards and like, hey, we made a mistake. Here's like another gift card for you to shop with us.
Yep. And so I'll speak to my brand just because it's from a higher end experience. People really care about like the process that you're bringing them through. A lot of the stuff for us is made to order just because it doesn't make sense to house a bunch of inventory, especially for higher ticket items. So with that, we create an experience like, hey, here's a ring size that will mail to you. You size your ring. Let us know what it is. That'll make this time more efficient. You won't have to return. It'll be perfect to you. And then when we have that from you, then we can put in the order and this is how many days it takes. And as it's happening, like allowing them to understand like this part of the process. So, hey, it's being like the gold is being dropped in the ring. This is what that process looks like. Click here to view like in better detail, like what's going on with your ring, or like, hey, we're in the packaging stage. Here is what you can expect when you unbox it. Hey, it's being shipped out. Make sure that you're home because you need a signature. Like just allowing them to feel like they're a part of the process is huge. Like I obviously now that I am a marketing consultant, when I consume things or when I buy things that are delayed and like the communication's just off, I'm like, oh, this just feels like this could be better. I feel like, so just making people part of the process and no one asks questions and no one's going to email you like, hey, I still haven't received, but like, because they know what's going on.
Yeah.
You told them the diamonds are being placed right now. And they're like, oh my God, my diamonds are being set.
I think that's so important. I mean, I just dropped off my car at Discount Tires this morning. And what was really cool is like, as soon as they checked you in, like you had this app or like this text message of like, hey, you've been checked in, or hey, your car is in the bay, your car is getting work done. And then it's like your tires are put on. I thought it was really cool just to see the timeline and it would go green. And I was like, that's really cool.
Yes. And it helps you manage your own expectations too, right? Like you can imagine if you're buying it for a gift or if you have a meeting and you're waiting for your tires to be figured out, like it removes a level of anxiety or the back and forth in your mind where you're trying to plan a backup plan and a backup plan. It's like, it just removes the chaos when you're just over communicating with people in like a concierge type way. It keeps people wanting to come back and like feel like they can trust you and your brand.
Yeah. What has been, you've been around like consulting, marketing, branding, like what is some of the mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make?
This is like kind of a controversial one, but I'm all for messy action. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not for messy action when it comes to the visuals of your brand. Because if it looks messy action, like people are not going to care. Like they're not going to want it. So packaging and logo and messaging, like that is all so important, especially from a marketing perspective. Like if you don't know your consumer and how to speak to them and the problem that you solve and the difference between the problem you solve and the symptom of the problem, like how they feel that problem in real life. And like, just because that's a more convoluted point to break that down for anyone who's an entrepreneur, your problem could be, I'm overwhelmed. I don't get enough sleep. I don't eat, right? Like those can be all of your problems, but those are symptoms. The real problem is you probably don't have systems in place. You're not delegating, like you are unorganized. Like that's the actual problem. Now, if I'm a business coach and I'm trying to hire people, I'm not going to be like, come to me for symptoms, come to me for systems and organization. Like, no, I'm going to say, if you're overwhelmed and you're tired and you're like, yes, like if you can't speak to your consumer in the symptoms realm and you do messy action on that and like you're not actually like getting anywhere with it because you're talking about the problem, like there's just going to be a huge disconnect between you and your consumer. And to me, I'm like, don't cinch out on that. Do that the right way. It's going to make everything else easier. Social media copy, your website copy, like any pitch decks or anything that you're sending out to the wholesalers to potentially buy. Like it's just so much easier because you're solving a problem for somebody and you know how to speak to it in a way that they'll purchase from you.
That was gold right there. I'm like, okay, I understand messy action and I agree with you to a certain degree.
Yes, to a certain degree. If it compromises the integrity of the brand, which for me is visuals and messaging, then don't do it and don't do it messily.
So what's next for Aisha?
For me, it is launching this collection, my first collection. The beginning was like a capsule, just like a teaser, but this is like a legitimate collection. Getting that launched because I'm in the product space. I am also dealing with shipments and manufacturers and all of the things. So when I can get it in my hands, then that's what's next. Speaking and just kind of like allowing myself to be present in this new version of myself and like just make changes as I go. Like how I was talking about like my day, like if I didn't like the day, like what didn't I like about it? And like just using that same concept in every facet of life, like literally that's what's next for me.
Oh, that's so good. And you spoke a lot about like products and like your consulting. When should somebody actually hire somebody like you?
It just depends. My specialty is like bringing products to market. So being able to like figure out where can we take messy action? Where can we skip corners on costs? Like what do we actually need to pay for? And then how do we launch this thing? Like what does that look like online? What does that look like on the back end with shipping and fulfillment? Like it's like a lot of marketing and operations. And so I love to work with brands in the beginning because then we don't have to go back and redo the stuff that you took messy action on.
So where can people connect with you?
You can connect with me for consulting at AAM Firm on Instagram. That's AAMFIRM. And then for my jewelry line, that's WHXTEATELIER, White Atelier. And then my personal is Aisha, AISHA. So those are all the places you can find me on Instagram.
And we will definitely put it in the show notes. And as we wrap up, there's always one question that I love to ask every guest on this show is, what is one thing Aisha does to play bigger in business and in life?
I think the one thing that I do to play bigger is meditate and devotionals. I guess that's two, but I feel like they're kind of like one and the same in some ways. But really getting quiet in my mind as often as I can to point out some of the revelations or the flaws or some of the subconscious thinking that I haven't actually brought to the surface, and then taking instant action to change those things. Like that actually allows me to play bigger, less self-sabotage, or acknowledging where I'm actually self-sabotaging and I'm not, and I'm unable to see it otherwise.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Aisha, for being on our show. I always appreciate you, how you show up, and I'm always excited to keep playing bigger with you, my friend.
Thank you.